about coping strategies. So everything that we do to cope with not getting those 7 desires of our heart met, that is in here. There are an array of coping strategies. Some of them are more positive. Some people are like my son, my middle son Jeremy is a CrossFit trainer, and he is obsessed with working out. Obsessed. He cannot go a day without working out. It's a coping strategy for him. It lets off steam for him, but it is more on the positive range. Most often though, we end up having negative coping strategies. And we're gonna go through coping strategies, I believe, in week 4 too. Okay, under coping are feelings. So there is an array of feelings that we can have many times because of our coping strategy. So the feelings are basic feelings: joy, excitement, anger, hurt, fear, sadness. But, and we're gonna talk about that in week 3. We're gonna go through a feelings wheel that has just tons of feelings, and then they're not even all the feelings that we can have. Under the feelings, we have feelings about feelings. So these are the feelings about feelings are the decisions we make about our feelings. So I can become angry at Mike for something he did or did not do. Then I can feel guilty about the anger. So that's a feeling about my feelings. And sometimes it gets very intertwined and deep. Sometimes we don't even realize, you know, am I angry about this, or am I disappointed? Am I angry about this, or am I embarrassed? So the authors of the book, who happen to be, are they psychologists? Psychologists. Well, Mark Lasser has passed away. Oh, you did, sorry. But they encourage us to get deeper and to try to name what we're really feeling, rather than keep it really surfacey.
So this is where most of us beat the tar out of ourselves. As our feelings about our feelings, particularly if we put those feelings into action, which then become behaviors. But even if we don't act on them, this is where we will allow ourselves to be beaten down by what we've learned, by our culture, our belief systems, families, all of those things.
Yeah. Because once you start feeling guilty about something, then you can actually it can turn inward, and you can become very angry with yourself, and it can lead to depression and despondency, and it can get bad. So okay, underneath feelings about feelings, we have perceptions, meanings, and core beliefs. These are the internal messages that we tell ourselves over and over again based on our beliefs, what we believe. And remember, in the first section, our beliefs are formed by what or who? Family is one. Family is like right on the top. Society or our culture, what goes on in our culture. Church. Unfortunately, religion or church is way down at the bottom now. It used to be kind of in the middle top. But school, friends, yep, those all contribute to our core beliefs and our perceptions about life. Everything that happens to us in our lives, we try to find meaning in that. Mike does a really good example of, if I was walking down the hall here at church and Dorothy was coming towards me, and I said, "Hey, Dorothy," and she just kept walking and didn't say anything to me. My first inkling is to try to find a meaning in that. What's going on? Did I say something to Dorothy? Is she angry with me? You know, what's wrong with her? Things like that. Unfortunately, we usually go to the most negative rather than the positive, because I could go to the positive. I could say, well, Dorothy must be really preoccupied. Maybe she had bad news today. I should pray for her. That's what we should do as Christians. Normally we don't. Normally we go to the negative and we say, you know, what's wrong with her, or what did I do, or things like that. So we always try to find meaning in every event that happens to us, including events that have happened way back in childhood. When we get to be an adult, we you know, like, why did I go through what I went through? So-and-so never, you know, they didn't go through what I went through. Why? We're gonna talk about that in week 3 as well. Did you have anything to add?
Excuse me.
Yep.
I wanted to ask, so in finding meaning to those things that we live, that we experience, that shapes our beliefs as well, positive or negative. So like, if you grow up thinking, sorry, somebody, a youth recently said this to me, God is a woman, and I said, okay, where does that come from? And as he told me his story, it's because the males in his family failed to live up to the responsibility of caring for him, and so he believes that either God is a woman or just puts his whole faith in the Virgin of Guadalupe, for example. And so I was telling him, I think the belief is coming from your experience, your traumatic experience. And so this
You are 100% correct. So
Mm-hmm.
based on being let down by the men in his life, it's easier for him to think that God is a woman. And to some degree that makes sense if you've had that experience. Right, that's all.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot. My mom was a perfect example. She was married, her husband cheated on her, divorced him, she remarried my father, but she never was healed. And remember, pain that isn't transformed will be transferred. And so my mom transferred a lot of that pain to me and my three sisters. She didn't trust men. She used to tell us men are all the same, they just have different faces, but they're all the same. And all 4 of us didn't trust men for a long time. So yeah, you can develop beliefs, and those beliefs many times they're not based on facts or reality, they're just because of what you've experienced and what you believe.
So the challenge becomes trying to find meaning and purpose in your pain and your trauma. Right? So we love people that do this. We love movies about it. We love reading books about it. We struggle with it on our personal level though. So I am trying to find meaning in my trauma that both my parents were alcoholics and they gave me away at birth. Rather than let that ruin my life, I'm trying to use it to help other people.
You have 2 brothers also.
I do.
How did that, her opinion of men affect them? Like, or did she look at them as the same way as like other?
No, I think she looked at them different. They're pretty much older than I am, so my oldest brother, I don't remember at all. He was out of the house at the time I was up in age. The second one, I think she may have only given us, the females, that message. Good question. Okay, and then under perceptions, meaning, and core beliefs, we have expectations. These are of self, of others, from others, and of life. We're gonna talk about that a little deeper in week 2, but we all have expectations. We have expectations of ourselves, sometimes they're of others, and sometimes our expectations are really low because we've been disappointed by people. So we don't set the expectation really high, because if we set it high and they don't meet up to that expectation, then we feel let down again. And that hurts. So, we're gonna really talk in depth about expectations and what happens when we don't take the time to verbalize our expectations, and when we do verbalize them and they don't get met. So that's in week 2.
As well as your expectations become your kind of personal rules that you live by. Not you, we live by. And it's what we anticipate, how we anticipate we're gonna, or how we expect we're gonna be treated. That's why it's so very powerful. So based on past experiences, her mom's first husband cheated. That's a huge letdown. She was devastated, right? She gets remarried, but she hasn't transformed that pain. So she transfers it to her daughters, thinking, I'm protecting you. And really what it did is it sent every girl off like this for a while on a boomerang. So that's how she expected me to treat Jackie and Henry and all my other brother-in-laws, which was not a fair expectation, because not everybody acts that way. Right? So be careful how you expect to be treated, because most of us will message that out.
Right. And ladies, let me plug this for ladies. The reason why we get into relationships that aren't so good is because we don't have enough expectation. If we don't expect to be treated like a lady, and it's hard in this generation. My husband was telling me one day, he was opening the door for a lady, and she told him, don't open that door and exert your male superiority, dominance on me. I'm thinking like, what? This is the crazy world we live in. But we can have expectations as ladies to be treated like a lady, you know? If you want a man to open the door, let him open the door. And, okay, and then underneath expectations are the yearnings or the desires. These are to be heard and understood, affirmed, blessed, safe, touched, chosen, and included. Each week, we're gonna go through one of the, desires, and then the last week, we're gonna go through the last 2 together. So those we're gonna get into, much more in depth. All we need to know now is that we all have these. Every human being alive has these desires in their heart. And every human being alive who has not gotten them met has developed coping strategies. And most often they're negative coping strategies, because we're trying to dull the pain of not getting those desires met. And then on the very bottom is the reclaiming. We're gonna talk about this as well. We need to reclaim who we are, and the truth about who we are, and the truth about those around us, the truth about God. We need to walk in truth so that our beliefs are strong and healthy. And when we do that, God can do a really great healing in our hearts. Any questions about that section before Mike comes up and goes through?
So one more thing about expectations here. So usually after we've gone through some trauma, disappointment, you know, pain. We develop biased expectations, or we develop like fear-based expectations. So the fear-based is, I'm leery of everybody because of what happened with this person or this group of people. And we prejudge them, that's the bias part. Bias means you're prejudging something, you're partial to one thing over another, usually because you've been hurt or it's a strong cultural thing. So be careful that you don't bias and have biased expectations and fearful expectations. Because you're gonna prejudge some situations, you're gonna reject some situations that could have been beneficial for you. Right, so if you think back, if you were here, we taught that lesson on needs and coping strategies, and we talked about substituting, denying, denial, and rejection. Remember that? That's where some of that rejection comes from, is that because my parents gave me away, I expect that other people are gonna hurt me. And so then I actually set myself up to be hurt. That's a fearful expectation, right? So biased expectation. All right. We're down here talking about how to use the iceberg model, right? Everybody see that? Using the iceberg model, the process. So remember what they're saying is, with the iceberg model, that the problem that we often see, the behavior, isn't really the problem. We get fooled by behavior and we focus only on that. But often the behavior isn't the problem, the behavior can be problematic. When I was drinking, when I was smoking weed and using opium and chasing women and gambling, yeah, my behavior was problematic, but my behavior wasn't the problem. The problem was I had that unresolved trauma. Okay, so this gets tricky. So what we see above the ocean here, the water, is about 10%, they will tell us, of an iceberg out in the ocean, right? And so what happens is we get so myopically focused on that, you know, like, you gotta stop doing, we go crazy on that. And I'm not saying the behavior isn't bad, but that's like a good magician. Look over here, but don't look over here at what I'm doing. Remember the Wizard of Oz? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain, because he had been exposed, right? And so what a good trickster, tap dancer, whatever, drug user, gambler, whatever it is, look at this behavior, because they are deathly afraid of talking about what's driving the behavior. The strength of the iceberg is down here, not up here, right? And so if we're gonna use this, we have to understand that we can't get stuck there. Now, I'm still working in the field, working with teenage boys and girls now. Got to work this morning, actually got a text before I got into the office. Young girl had to be, I think she's 14, she had to be restrained. She didn't get hurt or anything, but they had to restrain her because she wanted to run and she wanted to attack a staff person who, and I would just tell you, in this situation, the staff person was wrong. I'm gonna have to discipline him, go through an investigation. However, what we saw in her behavior, the more skilled of us, so me, you know, I have a degree, I've been working in the clinical, assistant clinical director, and another assistant director, we didn't ask questions about the behavior. All the staff were, well, what behavior, what did she look like? Did her neck look tight enough? You know, those are all signs. What the more skilled of us got down here and said, well, what was driving the behavior? Had a bad call with mom. So as soon as she got off the phone, now I'm being overly dramatic, but she was upset. So then the staff person approaches her in a way that she had given herself permission, because I had a bad phone call, I'm taking it out on somebody. I'm out of my house, I'm in a residential setting, bad phone call with mom, And so then we see behavior. That's what I'm talking about. When people drink, when they gamble, whatever, it's because of this down here primarily, and not what you might think you're seeing. All behavior is intended to resolve a problem. Once you learn how to think like that, so when I see behavior from my 6-year-old granddaughter, woo, you know, rather than just focusing on the behavior, what's going on with her? No, she doesn't have a lot of trauma, so it's usually, I don't wanna do something, I wanna control something, I wanna do something else. Mom and dad said, do this, don't do that, right? We see that behavior, we get so focused on that, we have to start learning how to help her resolve problems. So you need to talk to them. You don't really wanna do this, do you? No, I don't. What did daddy tell you to do? He said, I gotta get ready for bed. You don't really wanna get ready? No? Okay, so what can we do here? They usually look at you like, cause nobody talks to them like this. So and then when, in the silence, I say, okay, now if you don't get ready for bed, what's gonna happen? Well, daddy's gonna discipline me. That's not what you want, right? No. How can I help you get your needs met? Oh, can you ask daddy if I can stay up? No, I can't do that. Daddy says you gotta go to bed. How can we get through this? Well, I can go to bed and then maybe tomorrow I can ask dad, it's Friday, I'll ask him if I can stay. That's a great decision. That's what we teach the kids at the treatment center. I went to school all those years to do that. I think somebody just told me this. Dorothy, for crying out loud.
But that goes against most adults' belief. Adults believe, when I tell you to do something, you just better do it. So negotiating with a kid is hard.
It's like being stopped by the cops and you're in a bad mood. You know, you're not gonna win this situation. But I'm gonna give the cop a hard time and give him a piece of my mind. Really, that's what the kids are doing. I'm not in control here. So you have to understand that. So I say to the kids at work, they think I'm some genius or something. Because, you know, I'm the director, I'm down the hall, I come in, Mr. Mike, I wanna talk to you, oh, and I say, how can I help you get your needs met? I just go, how can I help you get your needs met? They go, oh, well, I wanna have pizza for supper. Yeah, what's on the menu? Wow, okay, so how can we get to the pizza? What do I get from getting you pizza? And my staff, they all know, so they don't worry, they just go about their business. If the young girl says to me, I'll do better in school this week, pizza. We write up an agreement. You do this, I will get the pizza, and I don't even have to pay out of my pocket. We have money through the contract with the county to get the pizza. But I go right to the need. What my staff used to want me to do until I trained them, focus on the mirror. She cursed me out. Yeah, you'll live. We pay you. Now, I don't want my staff to get abused. I'm just giving you an example, right? I'm dealing with you later. We're all paid to deal with her. And so they're a little bit hesitant to curse me out because I can say, you're out of here and bring me another girl. So they're a little bit hesitant, but my staff used to get caught up in the behavior. She cursed me out, she yelled, she's lazy, she's blah, blah, blah. Okay, you're giving me symptoms of behavior, you're not giving me what's driving the behavior. All right, so number one, what is the problem behavior? We need to identify that. What's the problem behavior? Number two, what are your feelings when this problem behavior occurs? So we talk to the girls and the boys. So right before you started yelling, what were you thinking? Well, the staff, you know, ticked me off. Okay, what were you feeling? What was your body feeling? Was your neck hot? Was your heart beating faster? Were your arms tighter? Because we're teaching them to observe their body, which can help sometimes with the behavior, right? We have to do the same thing. Number three, how have you coped with these feelings? Now, this is a good question. Jackie was talking about coping. We love our coping strategies. We will kill for our coping strategies, right? And I don't want to make light of this, and I pray that nobody in the room is related. Someone got killed in Cudahy the other day because of this. So the person who fired the gun, their coping strategy is, you cannot disrespect me. So if we get into an argument, the way I cope with that is not by just being an adult, bam, I kill you. That's how I cope. So that person loved that coping strategy so much, they had a gun and they had it loaded and ready to go, right? So we love our coping strategies. When you find yourself, "Rah!" you know, at someone, it's usually because they're starting to get to your coping strategies. They're not so much focused on the behavior, they're starting to go down this thing, and so like most of the things we teach, it goes down and back up. Right? 4, what is the distorted core belief that you have created about yourself? So both my parents are alcoholics, they give me away. My distorted core belief was I'm unlovable, right? So where does that fit in here? Give me a chance to take a squig of coffee here. You guys aren't gonna get shot if you don't say it like this. Pardon me? Yep. It's a little deeper than feelings, but good guess. Where is this distorted core belief on the chart?
Perception.
Yeah, so that's my perception, right, or this is my core belief. I'm trying to find meaning about it, and that's gonna be my perception. I'm unlovable. So what you have to do is you have to identify your distorted core belief and quit denying it. Why do you do what you do? And you know why you do what you know, where it started, you know when it started, you know what it was supposed to do. I know when I started drinking. I got drunk the first time I was 9 or 10. So I know when, I know why, because I wanted to be numb, because I had all of this trauma. And I would see my parents, and I knew they didn't want me. So that's why I drank, and I knew what it was supposed to do. It was supposed to make me numb, which was gonna be the way I was gonna cope all the way through life. Now you have to learn how to be that honest in order to solve your problem. So people often like, well, I don't know where it started. Okay. You may not wanna admit it in front of a group, but you do know where it started. And you know why it started, and you know what it was intended to do. Now, some of you in your homework, you're nailing it. You are being honest, and I commend you, but not all of you. Some of you are not even doing your homework anymore. Okay? You can only get so much healing, right? But some of you in your homework, you're very surfacey. Oh, I'm just gonna keep praying, I'm gonna keep reading, okay? How has that worked for you up to this point? And I'm all about praying and reading, but how has that worked for you? So clearly, there's something down here you need to get to, right? All right. Number 5, what are your expectations? So we talked about this a little bit. This becomes very important. What are you expecting out of life? Just be honest with yourself. How are you expecting people to treat you? Because often that's what the message is. When you don't expect much, she narrowed it down to the ladies, but this is all of us, you're not gonna get much. So we're not talking about being haughty and prideful and, oh, I'm better, but I don't expect to be treated like crap, and so I don't put that message out, right? Some of us walk around like doormats. You know, it's just all over our face, and it's all over our body language, and it comes out of our mouth, well, you know, I got hurt and this person and that, and so we're telling people, and guess what? The people that like to hurt people, they're very good at listening. I used to do domestic violence counseling with guys, and they would tell me I could see a victim a mile away. They're in the gym watching a school recital, and they're listening to everybody, and they're watching everybody around them, and they zero in on this lady because her whole conversation, her whole body language is, I'm afraid, and I don't feel worthy, and I don't think I look good, and I don't this and this and this. Wait, they like a magnet, they latch onto that, right?
Is this a group of batterers or victims of violence?
Both. I was dealing with the batterers and the victims, but I'm talking about the batterers right now.
The batterers are the ones that could zero in and.
Sex offenders are the same way, especially child sex offenders, because most of the time they have to groom them. And one of the things that sex offenders love to get off on is, I'm gonna be Mike and Jackie's friend, because they got grandkids, and I'm gonna actually fool them and groom their grandkids so I can abuse one. It's sick, but that's the message that you send out. Glad you came tonight? Nobody's glad they came tonight. Say, sock it to me, brother.
That's the real world, unfortunately.
Number 6, what are the desires you long for? So a lot of people go around in denial and they lie, oh, I don't need it. I don't need to be loved. I don't need to be in a relationship. God created us as relational beings. God created us to love one another and be loved. We go around, oh, I don't need it, and I'm just good, but you're not. Something is going on. So what we need to do is begin to admit, what desires am I in need of? Right, so tonight, we're talking about that first desire to be heard and understood. Number 7, what is the truth about you and the truth about the problem? What's the real truth? What is the real truth? So now this guy who killed somebody, I think it was Saturday or Sunday. So now he's sitting in the Milwaukee County Jail. He's gonna be charged with some degree of murder. He's gonna go to Dodge Correctional for 6 to 8 weeks. They're gonna assess him, then they're gonna send him out to another prison. And now that he's sober, his conscience will kick in and it will tell him at some point, that was a stupid decision. Now, right now, he's gonna try to hold on to it, because if he's never been to prison, you don't wanna go into prison with that body language that I'm scared. You gotta go into prison, right now, he's doing a lot of push-ups and a lot of sit-ups in his cell at the county jail, because, he wants to get buffed up, so that when he goes into the prison, that he doesn't become the victim. But at some point, he's gonna have to tell himself, what is the truth about what I did and what I believe? And number 8, what are some possibilities for change? That's what we're trying to help you identify here. All right, so E, even when we don't identify the true problems in our lives, when we don't identify the true problems in our lives, we cannot find lasting healing. So some of you guys have been around this mountain, you've been around this mountain, you've tried this, you've tried that, and you've tried this and that, because you still really haven't identified what the true problem is. You keep demonstrating behavior, but you keep running from what the true problem. So I was showing Jackie all kinds of crazy behavior because I was terrified of telling her what I was really afraid of, and what, that my parents abandoned me, and that I never wanted to speak, at that point in my life, I never wanted to speak to my mom again. My dad had already left when I was 7 or 8. So he was gone, and my plan was to graduate from high school, go in the Army secretly, and never speak to my mom again. She changed my mind about that. Because even in high school, I had to leave school. I had a part-time job after school, working at the rec center, because I like to take Jackie out and stuff like that. I'd have to leave school on the day that I got paid to beat my mom to the mailbox, because if she got that check, she was gonna cash it. Yeah, so I'd have to go all the way home. I lived on 17th and North, and going to school on 15th and Lapland, go all the way home and come all the way back, and I didn't have a car. So sometimes I get a friend, but then they had to skip school. So most of the time I was on the bus, right? So why did I talk about that? Oh, because that was the true problem. I didn't want Jackie to know how much trauma I had gone through. I was just, I'm gonna move on and not talk about it. A lot of people say that, not a good plan. F, we then look for false solutions and quick fixes, which are always frustrating and never satisfying. That was my life. I'm looking for false solutions and quick fixes. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to get high. I want to be numb. I want to be drunk. I want to party and have fun, because I didn't want to talk about what was going on down here, because it made me feel like less than a man. I definitely didn't want to cry about it. And so I refused to cry, and she's trying to figure me out. And can you tell me about yourself? What is going on? I'm looking at these crazy behaviors. There's gotta be something. She didn't know this stuff at the time, but this is what she was looking for. There's gotta be something driving these behaviors. G, the deeper issues are painful to deal with, and therefore we don't want to talk about them, I just said that. H, but when we choose to talk about the deeper issues, we will find a pathway to healing. You're up.
Any questions about that? About the iceberg model?
Dorothy, I love this thing.
It's nice, very nice.
We used to teach this, just handing out those sheets there. People will be looking at them. This is black and white, bro, we need high definition.
Yeah. Nice. Okay, there's no questions or comments, we're gonna start talking about that first desire, which is heard and understood. What hearing and understanding does for a person is it validates that person. It tells that person that you are hearing and understanding, or if we're the ones that are being heard and understood, it validates us. It says, you're important, your ideas are important, you have value. If you ever notice, kids love to talk about themselves, and they love when parents talk about them, because it validates them, especially if they're talking positive about them. It validates them as being important in that parent's life. And if you really want to validate a young person, a child, to get down on their level and let them talk to you and talk with them. It's our 6-year-old, I just love doing that. I'll get down on the floor with her and we're playing games or whatnot. She just like glows when I do that. And we do the same thing when, we're heard and we're understood by someone. We have the same potential to glow. So there on your sheet it says, we are born to communicate. We all have a voice and we need to be heard and understood by others. But for many of us, our assumptions about being heard and understood, about being heard or being ignored are rooted in our childhood. How many have ever heard the phrase, children are to be seen and not heard? How many lived with that phrase? Yeah, that is a false core belief, because children are to be seen and heard. Like I said, it validates them. Now, obviously, parents still have authority over children. We still make the final decisions, but when you allow a child or a teenager to express themselves and you hear them and you understand them, that puts a core belief in them that they are valuable and that their opinion is valuable. When we don't do that, things like what Mike's bad belief and my bad beliefs form where we don't think we're valuable. We don't think that we're important. I remember when my mom and dad were talking one day. I'm number 5 of 6 children, and my younger sister is number 6 of 6 children. And we basically were told that her and I were mistakes. That, we weren't planned, we were just oopses. And then, I don't know about my younger sister, but I know I was actually told that I was a double mistake because my mom thought I was a boy. She was positive I was a boy. They didn't even have a girl's name picked out. My name came from Jacqueline Kennedy. So, I was like, well, sorry. But that puts a core belief in a person, and for a long time, my core belief was I was a mistake. I was a double mistake. And that sent me into a lot of negative coping strategies to try to deal with that. It wasn't until I got down here and reclaimed this very scripture, that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, that God does not make mistakes, that we are all born for a reason, for a purpose, and that absolutely got rid of that distorted core belief of me being a mistake. When we are not heard as a child or adolescent, we develop, just like I was saying, these coping strategies. Some of them include, but this is not an exhaustive list, giving up on talking altogether, or raising your voice to be heard. People that do a lot of yelling, especially in relationships, chances are they were not heard and understood when they were a child or a teenager. And so they get into relationships that maybe the husband or the wife doesn't, listen to them like they should. And so they think, well, if I scream and yell, my dad was a perfect example. I never met his father, which would have been my grandfather, but I heard horror stories about how he was gone a lot. Then when he was home, he was very abusive physically and emotionally, and he would scream and yell and abuse them in different ways. So my dad, because he was not heard and understood, was a yeller. And especially if you cut him off, if he was trying to tell us something and we would cut him off, he would just start screaming and yelling. And it wasn't until years later that I understood why he was doing that. When I started talking with my mom and getting more of the facts about my grandfather and how my dad was raised, it was like, oh, that's why he was always screaming and yelling. It wasn't, don't take it personal, Jackie, it wasn't about you, it was about him and the lack that he had.
So going back to last week's lesson, he was adjusting and modifying. His dad yelled and hit. He yelled. Still abusive. Basically going in the same direction, but he modified and adjusted his behavior.
Yeah.
That's why it's not real change.
Yeah. Okay, how about repeating yourself or talking quickly? You can become argumentative and use phrases like, you always and you never. Those two phrases, along with others, are two of the worst phrases you can use in relationships. Don't ever say never. You never do that, or you always do that, because the first thing that's gonna happen is that person is gonna become defensive. Well, number one, it's a lie. Nobody always does that or never does that. And we become defensive when somebody says that to you. So, don't do that. It's not good for relationships. D there says, sometimes we can even resort to strategies that we've learned as a child, like pleading, stomping. I know nobody in here has ever done this. Pleading, stomping, hitting, pounding, bargaining, or even temper tantrums. I think we've all had at least one of these, where if we haven't gotten our way, we're gonna pitch a fit about it. I know in relationships, Mike and I have had our share of.
I never.
Well, you always do it.
You always.
But, and especially like I said, in relationships, we tend to, if we don't get what we want, we don't get our way, or we think that our spouse is not doing what they should do, we'll have ourselves little temper tantrums, adult temper tantrums. How about E? Resorting to these strategies rarely works and usually backfires, winding up simply wanting people to get away from our immature behavior. So in the first section, I was talking about our early marriage, and when Mike would start getting ready to go out and party, my first natural coping strategy was to get angry. So I would get angry, and I would make sure he knew I was angry, which would mean, yeah, I gave myself permission to get angry, stomping around the house, throwing things, you know, cursing him out, telling him, whatever, get out, I don't even want you here anyway. And it wasn't until I started getting deeper into the why are you acting this way, Jackie? And being more honest with myself, I started realizing, number one, my core belief was that he's a husband and a father, and he should be home with me and my 18-month-old. That was my core belief, which was a good core belief.
Yes.
But my expectation was dashed every time because my expectation was based on that core belief, he should be home with us. He shouldn't be out partying with a bunch of single guys. So
what's left out of that, what's left out of that is, why was I doing that? What's my trauma?
right. So because I started getting deeper, because that expectation wasn't met, I had to start saying, is my expectation a bad expectation? Is it too much for, literally, this is gonna sound silly, but at that point, my expectation of Mike was too high. He had trauma that he was not dealing with, so my expectation of him staying home and being a father and a husband, it was gonna be dashed every time. Then I had to say, okay, how is my behavior, like in our first section, is my behavior meeting my need over time? Is Mike staying home or is he leaving? Now he's leaving. So, do you wanna keep acting the way that you're acting, Jackie? Do you want to get the same results every time? No. Okay, so he wasn't gonna change, I had to change. I had to make a decision to stop getting crazy angry because it wasn't working, it wasn't helping, it was definitely hurting me. And I had to come to a realization that my basic problem was that I was afraid. It wasn't even that I was out of control, it was that I was afraid. That was my deeper feeling of the whole thing. I was afraid of what he was doing out there. I was afraid of him leaving. I was afraid of him cheating. It was just fear, total fear. And when I got to that point of realizing what my feeling was and what that core belief was, then I started actually looking at him, and I started praying, okay, Lord, what's going on in him?
Which is reinterpreting my trauma. Remember, we taught you how to reframe, reinterpret, redefine, and redesign.
Once I did that, and I started getting more of an insight of what was going on with him, I remember praying one night, and this was before I actually started really understanding, and I was doing a woe is me prayer. Look, woe is me, Lord. Here he's out, and he's partying, and I'm here all alone, blah, blah, blah. And I felt the Holy Spirit like just slap me upside the head and say, wait a minute, where is Mike? And I was like, well, he's out partying, and no, where is Mike? And I started realizing he's in a dark, dingy place, drinking his sorrows away with friends that have, literally, the friends he was hanging around with had no future. They just had no future. It totally changed the way that I was looking at him. Then I started realizing there were things down here that Mike was running from, and that's when I would, I think you said that in the first section, he'd come home after partying all like 2, 3 in the morning, he'd lay down in bed and I'd say, Mike, why are you running from God? Oh, he'd have a fit and he'd jump out of the bed and, don't talk to me about your God. it just totally changed the way, so, yeah, reinterpreting what he was doing or why he was doing it and gaining that understanding changed everything. You know?
It set her, hold on. It set her free because she stopped trying to control me. So when you reinterpret, you guys are probably forgotten, we told you to use those 4 tools. When you reinterpret to try to understand someone else's trauma, it sets you free from trying to own them and control them. When she realized I can't stop him from going out, so it wasn't an excuse for me to go out. Don't get me wrong, I was wrong. What we're talking about is how do you keep your sanity and control yourself in a very negative situation? You have to learn how to reinterpret.
And reclaim the truth.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would say God bless you, cause I would've,
Kill them, right?
yep,
Oh, I thought about that many times.
no, I don't know how you did it, but yeah.
I'm glad I cut you off.
That's what you're saying, these business.
Can I tell you, anybody can do it when you put your strength, when you use God's strength, anyone can do it, cause I'm not any different than any female in here.
Are you kidding me?
I could've,
You're the hottest.
you don't know, when I first found out that he had cheated, I felt like if I could pull every hair of his head out,
Out.
one strand at a time, that would not equal the pain I'm feeling. So I had my share of moments, yeah.
So I had to reframe and reinterpret my parents' behavior. One second. So as a kid, when you realize your parents don't love you and they gave you away, I'm trying to figure out, how is that? Who gives their kids away? And so I had to try to reinterpret, and as I got older, I didn't do it as a kid. In my 20s, when I started working in the field at Ethan Allen Boys School when it was open, I started learning some stuff. And I'm praying, and God said to me, your parents were alcoholics. My mom was an alcoholic at 19. Now, she was not a fall down drunk, but she couldn't go a day without drinking. That's dependence. Not the volume, it's the dependence. My father, on the other hand, was a fall down drunk in his early 20s. There has to be a lot of trauma to create a situation like that. So they did what they did. I don't let them off the hook. You gave me away, you had me, those were decisions you made, but in order for myself not to be pulled along with their behavior to get free, I had to be able to reinterpret. They were going through a lot of trauma, which led to their decisions and their behavior. I don't have to hook myself to that. That's not who I am. So I then go to step 3, I redefine myself.
I was just going to, share that, it's like totally making sense now. I've lost a marriage of 25 years, but I was in the same situation where, I knew I was being controlling. I wanted to know, he was doing the same thing, partying at all hours of the night. And I was just like, you know, what can I say to you to make you stop going? And I just had the need to control him. And I realized right now, I was afraid of the same things you were afraid, but, and that's where the control was coming from. If I would've known then, maybe I would've tried something different. But it's over now.
So let me say this to you.
Thank you for shedding the light.
Absolutely, and so, I don't know how many Christians are in the room, because you don't have to be a Christian to come to this program. But let me say something to you. The Bible says that the fervent or effective fervent prayer of a righteous man or woman avails much or accomplishes much. So what does that, this is what that means. Your flesh wants to control. She wanted to control me, and I was doing horrible stuff. You wanted to control your husband. And so when you walk by your flesh, I'm gonna control this, I'm gonna be able to say something, I'm gonna be able to, and what we really need to do is effectively pray. God, what is going on with Mike? This is what she started praying. that makes him want to drink every day, and makes him want to smoke weed every day, and makes him want to be with other women, and makes him use opiates. When God started to open her eyes, her prayers became more effective, right? So here's what effective means. If I told you guys, and this is not happening, I'm going in tomorrow for an operation to remove my, big toe. Well, you could start praying about that because you know what's going on. That's effective. Step 2 is to be fervent, which means to be extra consistent. So this isn't a one-time thing. I didn't change overnight, bless you. I didn't change overnight, but as soon as Jackie started praying, something started happening in me, right? Now here's where I want to encourage you. There's something with kids. All of us who have had kids and grandkids, there's something called extinction behavior. And here's what it looks like. Stop doing that. Right? This is what kids do, right? That's called extinction. I know I gotta stop. So as an adult or a teenager, when people are praying for me and I feel the Holy Spirit pulling me, I'm gonna drink more and more and more and more, I'm gonna smoke, and so to us it looks like, oh, it's not working. That's actually when it's working. That's actually when it is working. Now, if you can pray through that, if you can continue to be effective, God, so if you find out things that Mike was abused as a child, or, Mike was abandoned, or whatever it is, that's effective. You have information. So sometimes you have to ask God to reveal it to you. What is going on with this person that I love? And then that fervent means whether you wake up with a splitting headache or not, I'm praying for this person today. I am not going through the day without praying. That consistency is the proof of passion. I don't tell her on January 1st every year, I love you. And if anything changes, I'll let you know. I need to tell her multiple times a year. I need to be consistent, and then I need to have the behavior that, right? Hello? Yeah. Where are we?
We can do half, and then Michelle.
All right. To complicate the issue further, really hearing someone always involves more than just understanding facts or issues. Listening involves hearing the heart of someone, hearing someone's feelings. So when you listen, when you're talking to somebody, I'm gonna tell you as a counselor, here's what you want to do. You want to listen for feeling. Are they joyful, or are they excited, are they angry, are they hurt, are they fearful, or they're sad, or what? You want to listen for feelings, because that will give you the key to where I need to go in this conversation. But if you come into the conversation and I know what you're just waiting for them to take a breath, and then, and I'm gonna fix you, you're gonna miss the feelings. In fact, there's something called motivational interviewing. Anybody ever hear of motivational? Right? So motivational interviewing is you listen for healing and change, and so somebody says, man, I'm upset today. I say, you really seem upset today. And it just hooks me, yeah. And they start telling you why they're upset. So you're all gonna be counselors, right? You do the soft listening skills, counseling skills, and say, tell me more about that. How did you come to that conclusion? Even with a kid, say that to a kid. They will never stop talking. Don't ask them what they did in school today. The same thing I did yesterday. You gotta get beyond that, because you're letting them off the hook, right? And so you gotta listen. Are they excited about school, or are they angry? What's going on? Are they getting hurt at school? Same thing in your relationship. All right, tell me more about that. How did you come to that conclusion? Most of us like to talk about ourselves. So when I say, tell me more, people, where was I? G, ironically, the best way to be heard and understood is to be a good listener. Did you catch that? So let me burst your bubble, but in a good way. There isn't gonna be a magic word or sentence you're gonna say to change somebody, especially when they've been going on this path for a long time. You need to become a good listener and start praying about what's going on, God, down here. I see this behavior. but what's driving that behavior? What is driving that behavior? That's when you go into what, and we'll talk about this, what coping strategy they're trying to use. Remember, we taught you the 4 basic coping strategies: substitution, denial, or substitution, distortion, denial, and rejection, right? Remember the woodchuck story? When you've been hurt so bad, you get into rejection, you don't know the hand that's trying to help you from the hand that's trying to hurt you. Woodchuck limping across. Woodchuck doesn't know me. The woodchuck has been hurt. So, doesn't know my intent, right? All right. So H, guidelines to becoming a good listener are: do not interrupt the person speaking. That's a killer, boys and girls. Because what I'm really saying is, I'm interested in what you're saying. I have something more important to say. That's a killer. I wouldn't want her to do that to me. I used to try to fix her because, you know, I'm a counselor. And she had to get to the point, hey, I'm getting ready to tell you something, do not try to fix me, I need you to just listen. Oh, it was like putting handcuffs on me and putting me in a police car. I love my wife, of all people I want to help, and so I'm just listening to the story, but it helped me to be a better counselor because I'm running ahead and no, come back, listen. What is she saying? What's the feeling? Right? How's she trying to cope? So the better you listen, the better the counselor you are. Look the person in the eyes, right? It's always usually a sign of guilt when I can't look her in the eyes. She says, what do you have for lunch today? I was good. No, what did you have for lunch? Look at me, right? Kids do this. I had a salad today. I'm on a roll this week. I'm on a roll this week. I lost a couple pounds. I'm on a roll, baby. Since I've been so good, we can go to culture. Number 3, repeat back to the person what you've heard. This is called paraphrasing or summarizing, right? So at a point, hey, I just want to make sure I understand. And if you can repeat it back in something, it doesn't have to be word for word, but if you get the general gist, it's like fishing. Now the hook is set. He's listening to me. And so now I can trust to give out more. But if she's talking to me and I'm watching the back, what? That ain't gonna go over good, right? 4, do not interject your own opinion unless it is asked for. Oh, this was killing me. Let me tell you what to do. I go to work and I tell people what to do all day. I fix this, do that, do this, do it. And I come home and I can't do that. She's like, hey, you're not my fixer, buddy, you're my husband. You are my lover, baby. Let's see. God wants us to talk with him, and we want him to listen to us. Right? So it's a two-way thing, talking and listening. Find that in Psalm 77, verses 1 and 2. I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. And J, we also need to be heard by God. Isaiah 55:3, give ear and come to me. Hear me that your soul may live. So God wants to speak wisdom to us. But God deals in truth down here. He doesn't get faked out by behavior like us, ever. He knows what's driving that behavior. And so we need to be looking, almost all behavior is intended to solve a problem, and we start as babies. Even sometimes in utero. Babies start kicking and stuff, and sometimes it alerts the mom that, hey, maybe that milk don't taste so good, or whatever, I need to go get a checkup, right? The baby comes out, they immediately begin to let us know, when they're hungry, when they're wet, when they're poopy, they cry, right? They fidget. They're communicating, I got a problem. And so the only behavior they have at that point is to cry and kick and scream or whatever, and they get our attention. Right? But they're letting us know, I got a problem. Thankfully, it's none of this stuff yet. Unless mom is a drug addict or something, then, it could be. But there's a problem. And so then we do look at that behavior to figure out for a baby and kids can be the same way. If your child is normally talkative and they get really quiet, they're signaling to you there's a problem, something is going on. Ask questions, don't make assumptions. Oh, I know what's wrong with you. Actually, you don't. Let me tell you, right? I want you to tell me. Okay? So, any questions or comments?
Can you explain a little bit this, Isaiah 55:3? The last part, hear me that your soul may live.
So, we're body, soul, and spirit. And so God speaks to our soul and our spirit. And so if we hear God, we read his word, we become better attuned at hearing his voice. Now, I don't mean audibly. I've never heard God say, hey, Mike.
Right.
But as I'm reading and praying and pondering and considering and thinking about things, the Holy Spirit has impressed on my heart, here's what you should do, maybe you don't wanna do that.
So his soul is the Holy Spirit in me?
No, our soul. God is a spirit. So we're body, and the soul is the emotions and our mind and our thoughts and our belief, all of that stuff. And then we are a spirit that will either live forever in heaven or hell. You don't look convinced.
I'm confused by your soul. Is it God's soul?
My soul.
My soul.
So God is speaking here.
Oh, he's speaking.
Give ear and come to me.
Okay.
So that was it. Yeah, it's our soul.
I thought it was us asking him to give ear to us,
No, at this point, it's him
to
speaking.
him speaking. Thank you. Okay. now
You are
it's-
quite welcome. Any other questions or comments?